Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Chrissy Raywalk, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Delaware. One of the things that I appreciate and enjoy most about leadership is that it's a journey, not a destination. It involves lots of different twists and turns, and you need many different types of people to go along with you on your journey in order for it to be successful. So today, I invite you to start your leadership journey with this podcast. Enjoy.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership. This episode will be guest hosted by Diana Curti. Diana is the Director of Marketing and Membership at Wakefield Research Partners. She has a background in sponsorship, sales, and activation. So without further ado, take it away, Diana.
Welcome into the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm your guest host for today, Diana Curti, and I'm speaking with AJ Maestas. AJ is the founder and CEO of Navigate Research, which is a leading research firm in sports and entertainment, focused specifically on advising their clients into data-driven decision-making. AJ, it's great to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here, Diana, and a great debt of gratitude to Ty as well.
Awesome. Well, I guess first and foremost, I should congratulate you on another anniversary for Navigate. Is that right? Today is a 14-year anniversary?
Yes, thank you for noticing. It's kind of weird. It feels like 40 years, not 14. So it's a strange way to keep track. For anyone who's an entrepreneur out there, you realize that the time just goes by. What do they say? The days are long and the years are short.
Yeah, well, I mean, it must be a tribute to your success then. And of course, what we want to get into a little bit today is this new and very different environment that we're facing globally and across many industries, but specifically how it's impacting sports and entertainment. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is, specifically Navigate is really focused on data-driven answers, and you're trying to work with your clients to provide those insights in a variety of ways. So when you're keeping in mind the perspective of different brands and partners that you're working with, how do you see that proof of performance and ROI of being evaluated and changing moving forward? And what types of data are going to be really critical to evaluating those partnerships now that maybe were less important in the past?
Yeah, I would love to. And I think you share in this opinion, with what you do at Wakefield and the team there. I couldn't agree more with your mission statement, right? Which is we are inundated with media equivalency and sort of earned media numbers, which are often really just a justification for the budget versus other ways you could spend it in measured media. And I really believe the future lies in understanding effectiveness. And if you look at where the industry is going and attempt to answer both those questions at the same time, we are short on social, digital, and mobile assets. That's where the money is flowing to. And it just also happens to be an incredibly measurable medium and platform. So if you think about what you and I, Diana, do for a living, it is measuring the effectiveness and the impact of these deals for buyers and sellers. And I'm pretty sure that's where it's going, or it's going to shrink. If you can't prove performance with alternative investments that down to the minute and second, laser focused to who you want to reach, are able to be measured, it's going to be pretty tough competing for dollars.
And when you're talking to a brand or a sponsor and kind of advocating on their behalf and looking at what type of partnerships that they should be pursuing with properties, teams, entertainment, whatever it may be, if they're really zeroed in on those impressions, something that they see those numbers coming off the page, they think that is substantial, that's good enough just to have that media value. How do you tell that story to them and help them switch their mindset a little bit, as it were, to see why more actionable deliverables are going to be important, especially moving forward now?
Well, we typically try to honor the media equivalency measures because they do matter. That's an efficiency measure. You certainly don't want to invest off target on the wrong audience at the wrong price with the wrong reach. But we then try to build on that and instill in them sort of a belief that ultimately their job is to sell incremental products or services, widgets, let's call it. And in an effort to do that, we try to align their incentive and vision for their sponsorship strategy with those objectives that the business has overall, as if you were in the seat of the CFO or the CEO of that company. And I think this is helpful whether you're a buyer or a seller. So not just when we're working with the brand side, but if you ultimately are helping them be a better marketer and sell more stuff, they're going to get promoted. They're going to be able to protect their budget. They're going to be able to protect their job in crazy times like this and COVID-19. So as silly as it might seem, we don't try to strike the obsession with efficiency and reach measures. We just try to add to it effectiveness measures and real outcomes. This is ultimately what a great marketer should be doing anyway. So you're helping them be better at their job. And it might seem a little funny to appeal to their public and private fears in doing so. But at the end of the day, you're trying to put them in alignment with their business. You are helping them in their career and everything associated with that. If you can get, people to be wise and intelligent investors. And boy, when you have effectiveness and efficiency, working in combination together, this is when it really, goes off the charts, right? This is when it gets special.
That actually is a great transition into the next part of it here. So you were on a webinar with SSB talking about some of these factors, how post-COVID world is going to change the dynamics of sports and how some of those asset mixtures come into play. And one thing that you were discussing in that conversation is that when it comes to sports specifically and sponsorships, anywhere from 40 to 50% of that sponsorship revenue is really being realized through those in-venue assets. So if we're potentially going to enter a world here where we have reduced stadium capacity or even playing games without fans, that's going to raise some questions for the sponsorship world and partners that are engaging there. So, looking past the current climate and conditions that are going to be due to COVID-19 right now, how do you see those partnerships diversifying and changing to be less reliant on those assets, bringing in those digital assets even more so and using them more effectively? And kind of a secondary question to that, do you see this as being something that will create a permanent change and mindset shift? Or do you think this is something that brands will temporarily adapt to get through this period and then maybe go back to what they were doing?
Well, I do think there'll be some permanent change, but I think it'll be a positive thing, an accelerator to the place we should have been going, and we're going anyway. But to answer your first question in order, you already hinted at social, digital, and mobile growth. There's no question pro sports, and then even more so at the collegiate level, we are behind in the ratio of those assets and benefits as a part of a comprehensive cross-platform, sponsorship or marketing investment. Now, some of that's the practical reality of what's controlled at the team or university level, but there are ways to mitigate that difference. And if you look at spending in the digital space, it is a double-digit % growth per year, has been for a very long time. Mobile has passed PCs, depending if we're talking about impressions, total audience, minutes spent, or ad revenue, sometime between 7 years ago and 1 year ago. So basically, if you're not in a mobile-first world already as a marketer, you are approaching a decade behind the times. So there's things that can be done, right? There's no question, but we're envisioning a world essentially that it has 50% or more of sponsorship revenue attached to virtual assets as opposed to physical traditional assets. Now, don't get me wrong, there'll be innovation and there'll be new things like jersey patches and things like this that set that ratio back. But the point is, that's where the money is. I believe 95% of revenue growth in digital in the last year went to Google and Facebook owned properties alone, just those two companies. So I'm not trying to say that this is easy. Other people are having this challenge as well. The broadcasters and networks. We work with all the major networks and broadcasters. They have the same challenge. How do we position ourselves as a place for digital, and how do we capture that revenue and value? And there is no perfect answer yet. I don't have that $1 billion solution yet on how a team or sports property or university gets that digital revenue. But again, I think we're accelerating the direction we're already going. Attendance and ratings, generally speaking, on a global basis, were on a pretty steady and consistent decline. Fragmentation of TV rights, what have you. Coming out of COVID-19, of course, there'll be a spike in ratings. But if you look at the long trend, we were going to have to get creative and virtual and digital with our inventory and our relationship with fans anyway. And it serves them in more ways than just the sponsorship relationship. So the second part of your question was how will things change other than what we just addressed on a going forward basis? I think a lot of it has to speak to what you and I both do for a living, right? I mean, what Wakefield does, what Navigate does is measuring that effectiveness. And as we discussed, you can get it almost anywhere else in the media world. We're going to have to offer that as well. ComScore is doing some good things, right? They are making investments in those directions. You noted the podcast I did with SSB, that's a CRM system and data aggregator. They have a platform as a part of their software, which is a portal for sports sponsorships. And it's easy. It's not that hard. There's some simple metrics that you can put in there to track that you don't need to buy a fancy database or spend a bunch of money with Navigate as consultants to do it. Just basically key performance indicators that you can agree to in a contract and check in quarterly or yearly with your partners to see how you're progressing, assuming those are aligned with actual outcomes, actual sales, actual purchases. And then a level above that, there's things that are getting really fancy, right? There's some pretty incredible passive observation research. So not taking people's word for what they say they're going to buy or how they feel about something, but just watching them. Unfortunately, much of that is controlled via Google and Facebook as well. But being able to see what people actually do, and as transactions move to be mobile and digital, and they certainly are at a rapid pace, we will have the ability with data to see exactly who shifted buying behavior. So a permanent change in that direction, no question. We actually have some catching up to do because the world had already gone in this direction. We were just a step or two behind in sports.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. For whatever reason, we seem to have been one pace behind in terms of measuring some of those points that would help us actually get in front of our customer base and our fans to offer them better value and then better return for those partnerships. So even along those lines, and again, this referencing back to that conversation that you had within SSB's webinar, you spoke a little bit about Gen Z and how that's going to be such an important base for people to be targeting and understanding that behavior. Do you see that in the sports space in particular being that new market to be able to take over some of these season ticket holders and the older fan base that's maybe less digitally savvy and not engaging with the team and the property in the same type of way in a digital space?
Oh yeah, almost everything has materially changed with millennials from prior generations, and then again materially changed to Gen Z relative to millennial behaviors. So if you're still sort of feeling like, these millennials are different, it's hard to reach this audience, this is a brave new world, brace yourself. A similar level of shift and change is coming again, and it's not a consistent change. It's not always in the same direction. One of the things we shared on that podcast was Fortnite being the second sort of sporting competition as far as popularity with Gen Z behind the NFL and one slot ahead of the NBA. It's different in so many ways. It's kind of shocking, honestly. So you will not engage with these people with long form content at the same rate you did in prior generations. Social media activity has continued that incredible pace away from live television and into sort of library viewing, right? And on-demand Netflix type viewing. There's a great number of fans who are interested and even participants and played in their youth and continue to play that don't necessarily follow the sport they were a participant in. That was an age-old safety we could always fall back on. If you're a participant, you'll be a fan the rest of your life. You'll follow this normal curve. So in short, I'm saying the entire pathway to fandom has changed. The way they consume the sport has changed. The way they consume media has changed. And your relationship with them and the way in which you're going to draw revenue out of them is going to change. Subscriptions are the future. And you see very, very few sports properties comfortable with and utilizing the subscription model to have a relationship with their fans, and in particular this next generation. But the older edge of Gen Z is already 24. They are already well into that 18 to 35 core sports fan segment that is what carries the day on ratings on television and sets the future of fandom and ticket buying and what have you. So it isn't get ready for Gen Z if it's essentially, if you're not ready right now, you need to take a master class real quick
and get caught up because you're already behind again. Well, that's some good insight there. And I wanted to, before we run out of time here, switch gears just a little bit to another area of Navigate's business. And that's that advisement with universities on multimedia rights and finding the right partner to come in and to be able to advise and lead in that sort of way. So as you're having those conversations and anticipate having them as time goes on here, how do you think the elements of both COVID-19, the name, image, likeness proposals that are coming through, how do you think those create new, exciting opportunities for MMR partners? And what types of creative challenges do you see coming forward in those conversations that you've been having in the space so far?
I think the world may be ready for a new model. That's certainly what you're seeing Learfield ask universities to move toward a revenue sharing model, one that shares risk and reward, which is a good thing to align incentives, but it does take away that revenue certainty, which was one of the big keys to universities making those external commitments. So we'll see. I would expect a pretty significant change to the landscape as far as how incentives are aligned. Some of that's a good thing. Some of that will make universities better business partners and have an incentive to continue to evolve and innovate and say yes to deals that come across their desk. But some of it's sad to see that go away, because you then start to ask yourself, well, why wouldn't you do it yourself? And there are many reasons. It's very difficult for universities to hire and fire quickly and compensate with, variable income that could have some 30-year-old salesperson making more than the dean of a school at the university. But there's a reason. There is a reason. Over 90% of major universities outsource their multimedia rights, while virtually no professional sports teams do in the United States. And on a long-term basis, zero professional sports teams in the U.S. do. They might just for a short period when they're maybe opening a new building. So in their eyes, it's laughable. We work with all the major league offices and dozens of pro teams. So as much as my passion is collegiate athletics, the truth is that it's a small minority of our business as far as revenue. In the pro sports world, it's absurd to think that someone, let's say you had donors at the pro level, the idea that you would have a person calling on the donor and a separate external entity calling on that same business to get a sponsorship, and possibly a third person calling for a premium seat sale, that's madness. That's really poor practice as far as customer relationship management and the development of that relationship. So long answer to a simple question, but what an opportunity for change. If I'm running an athletic department, and boy, is that easy to say, because I'm not, nor will I ever, but if easy to say as a consultant, right? When I know the challenges and risks they all face in those seats. If I were sitting there, I would ask myself, why outsource to all these different parties? Should I just be doing this myself? Should I replicate the business model you see in the pro world, where you see these external vendors operating at great levels above what universities historically could do for themselves, and build that myself? Or if not, should I have so many disparate parties making these phone calls and these relationships, or should I put all of those rights in the hand of one entity that can handle premium seats, regular seats, maybe even annual fund donations, as well as sponsorships and all the other things that come with multimedia rights? So in my mind, we should go one way or the other. Outsource it all, take it all in-house, and we'll see if I'm right. I'm usually not, so I doubt that actually happens. But we are working with a Power 5 university that's giving that a serious look right now. So they might be the first.
Gotcha. Well, I love the mindset of embrace the change, take it on as a positive challenge and an opportunity to make improvements in ways that the current model wasn't allowing. So I think that's a great attitude, and hopefully many universities will keep that concept in mind as they're going through this challenging time and handling some of the situations that we're going through. So just to wrap up and kind of close this out here, I'd love to hear from you what you're most excited about in this next year for Navigate, going into a 15th year. What are you looking at really taking on and growing what you guys are doing, whether it's team-wise, strategy, whatever it may be. And then just tell our listeners a little bit about where they can find you and keep up with Navigate. So if they have more questions and want to know more, they can find you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a kind question. We are doing our best to help our industry and help rise the tide for all the challenges and also opportunities that we're facing with COVID-19. So I would say getting linked in with us at Navigate Research would be a great way. We're trying to share as much good information as we can for the masses to be helpful. Again, I'm most looking forward to, as far as Navigate, this is a problem across all industries, not just sports, but it's 2020, and the access, as we just talked about, to so much incredible rich data and information to help you make decisions. If you're of the mindset that strategy comes before tactics, if you're of the mindset that data and insights and measures make us better and sharper at our business, which obviously that's a core belief at Navigate, then the question becomes how. And I would argue that there's a ton of data sources, maybe even too many for us to handle, and a shortfall of those who are turning it into actionable recommendations, putting it into your strategy, using it in intelligent ways. We have it at our fingertips, and usually at a very reasonable price, but we don't use it. So that's our future, and that's what I'm most looking forward to, is we are changing our relationship with our clients so that we aren't just delivering them the information, that we're sitting alongside them as a co-pilot as they make these decisions, as they pivot and shift and change their business and their careers for themselves in the future. So that's fun, that's exciting, and we're making sure that those positive outcomes become a reality when we get hired. I'm pretty excited and pretty confident that's the right way to go. So yeah, we'll see if it happens to the rest of the industry. No shortage of data though right now, right? It's a shortage of using it.
Absolutely. Yep, it's practical application and making sure you know what you're looking at, which definitely room for growth, but it's an exciting time for that for sure. So thank you again for joining us today, and thanks for listening in to the One Question Leadership podcast today. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership, and make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you all for the next conversation.
This episode of the One Question Leadership podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.